Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third Fireside Chat. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. This is the first time that we've been together since we got the governor's news that school would be off campus until June, and that is clearly a disappointment. Certainly to me, it's been a huge disappointment. I know it's been a disappointment to our students and our faculty and our parents, and especially our hearts go out to the class of 2020, where it's a particular loss and a particular sense of grief. And for all of us, the missed traditions and experiences of the spring are very hard to think about. Tonight, though, we'll be in this chat tonight, we'll be focusing on the future. And I think that, and it's always good to have things to look forward to. So our current head of the upper school, Ben Doherty, was honored to be selected to be the head of school at the Island School, which is in the Bahamas, and sounds pretty terrific right about now since it snowed this weekend. The Island School is a special place for both Ben and his wife Laura. They both taught there and had happy times in the past. And of course, it's a wonderful thing to be a school that helps develop people to leadership and to become heads of school. And so Derryfield, this is an honor for Derryfield as well. And I want to just take a moment to thank Ben and Laura and the 6 years that they've been at Derryfield, and the wonderful, wise leadership, the excellent shaping of the culture of community in the upper school. And then particularly, Ben really led the development of the Leading for the Common Good overall program and the lead class within it. So we will say, see you soon again, Ben and Laura, because you can't stay in the Bahamas forever. You got to have summers in beautiful New England. But tonight, I'm excited to introduce you to the new head of the upper school starting next fall, and that will be Jed Silverstein, who comes to us live from Chicago. So I'm going to give a little background on how the search process. When we heard Ben's good news, the search process formed a search committee of faculty and administrators and students, and we worked with a consultant, and the consultant helped cull for us if you can imagine, the semifinal pool was 41 exceptionally talented and appropriate applicants, weeding out a lot of actually excellent applicants, but who were excellent in ways that we weren't sort of focused on the way that we are directing the upper school. So the 41 applicants included 3 former heads of school, and all of them had extensive experience in the areas that we had honed in on. And those areas were, we were really looking for a person with academic expertise and intellectual vigor, with a track record of community building, and also with strong management skills. And we honed it down to 4 finalists, and then to 2 finalists, 4, I guess that would be semi-finalists, 4 and 2 finalists, and then Jed. So thank you to everyone out there for sending in your questions. I will answer those shortly, or we will answer those I will ask them, and we'll get to know Jed through those questions, and then I'll go to the chat and see if there are questions that come in from the chat as well. So we know there's always the potential for Zoom bombing. Were that to happen, we will mysteriously shut down. Also, if a golden retriever trips the power cord to my laptop, we may also shut down. So it will be a mystery. We'll imagine that it was the more dramatic Zoom bombing if that happens. So to start with, Jed, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about your educational and professional experiences that have shaped you. Or in other words, as I like to ask people in interviews, can you tell me the story behind your resume?
Mary, I just want to start by saying how incredibly humbled. I didn't know the details of that search process until I can't wait to tell my wife, who probably won't believe it. I'm incredibly humbled by that. I do know that Derryfield was an incredibly attractive opportunity to a lot of my friends, to some of my colleagues, to people in the field and in my network. So the fact that I am sitting here today, I feel tremendously blessed and lucky. And I can't really put into words adequately how excited my family is to come and join the Derryfield community. We feel like we've just hit gold. I will tell you a little of my story, and then we'll take it from there.
Great.
So I was born in New York City, and I was brought up in Scarsdale, New York, a suburb of New York City in Westchester County. Both my parents were lifelong New York City public educators and administrators, mostly working in very under-resourced communities like the South Bronx or East New York. They did that for a combined 80 years, and they are my heroes. And I don't think that anything I do in my professional life is not in some way homage to them and their commitment and passion for helping people grow and develop. So I went to public schools. I graduated from Scarsdale High School and did my undergraduate degree in the comparative study of religion, mostly because it was a very interdisciplinary program at Harvard College. I absolutely loved it. I was, the kid who was always staying after class. I was, the guy who was, scheduling dinner meetings to talk about material and go over papers with my friends. I just really absolutely loved it. I did a ton of theater. I was a college athlete. Did a lot of service work, mostly in education. When I graduated, the preacher to Harvard University, who's a man who I think about every day, a guy named Reverend Peter Gomes, told me that I should join the clergy. And when Peter Gomes tells you something, you just do it. It's just no questions asked. So for a long time, I was on the road to actually becoming a clergy member. I was going to become a rabbi. I worked as a chaplain at a couple of different universities, the University of Rochester and Brown University, pastoral counseling, and I absolutely loved that work. But there was an intellectual kind of fire in my belly that I thought would not be quenched by pursuing a position in the clergy. And so I decided that I would just do what I've always felt in my bones, which I became an independent school teacher. And my first job was at a Friends school in New England, in Providence, Rhode Island. And Friends education really, for me, laid bare this like really profound egalitarianism, which I still think of in the classroom as sort of my moral foundation. This sense that anybody in the room can have a great idea at any time, that everybody has a certain divine spark in them, regardless of age and race and gender and experience. I just think that's so liberating. And I did that for a couple of years. I absolutely loved it. I knew it would be my life's work, but I wanted some content mastery. And at this point in my life, I had fallen in love with philosophy because I was asked to teach an ethics course. And I was like 2 pages ahead of the kids, right? I was like, this is not good. So I thought I'll go off, I'll do a master's degree. I went to Tufts University. I did a master's degree in philosophy, mostly ethics and political philosophy. Graduate education, if you do really well, there's a tremendous amount of pressure for you to go on. And of course, I gave into that pressure. And from there, I went to Stanford and I started a PhD program in the philosophy of education, which is really the discipline and the topic that's closest to my heart. And then decided that I actually wanted to finish a philosophy of education dissertation, but in a more rigorous analytic philosophy department at Brown University. So I took my PhD there. And then despite a lot of pressure to go off and become, another person behind a podium, speaking to a bunch of faceless kids in a hall, I wanted to go back to what I know I've always loved, and that was independent school teaching. So I spent 7 years after getting my PhD from Brown, 7 years teaching English and philosophy and theater and history at Riverdale Country School in the Bronx. There I moved into school leadership, and I was the director of the learning research team, which was a mixed learning support and enrichment program all about differentiation of instruction and training faculty on how to do that well. And also professional development, which became really my passion as a leader, was how to help teachers grow and develop into the best teachers they could be. After 7 years, this school in Chicago named the Latin School of Chicago came knocking on my door and said, we would really like you to apply. And I did. And my wife and myself and my 2 kids and my dog, we spent the last 3 years at the Latin School of Chicago. I am the Director of Studies and Professional Development. My portfolio is to take care of the curriculum and pedagogy, oversee that for the entire school. It's 1,300 kids, 175 faculty plus, and junior kindergarten through 12th grade. So 4 years old to 18. Very strategic job, very long-term planning. And then happily, I'm talking to you now on my way to Derryfield and Manchester, New Hampshire.
So Jed, a parent writes, as a parent, I know how special Derryfield is, but what drew you to Derryfield both initially and after research?
So initially, that's sort of a personal question, and what was going on inside of me that made me even think that I would not end my career in Chicago. For me, it's been a process of clarification of what it is that I really, really care about, the things that I'm really good at, and the things I really enjoy. And that led me to realize that I'm a teacher. I mean, first and foremost, that is what I love. That is why I'm interested in leadership. It is my job. It is my hobby. If I could teach on the weekends, I would. And so I knew that for me, this like high level strategic position where I wasn't supposed to teach was just not going to have longevity for me. Teaching is the fuel in my motor. And I've always been attracted to divisional head positions because many of them have this hybrid structure where you do leadership work and then you also are expected to teach. And for me, that is just an absolutely great fit. Also, I knew that I was working at schools that were just way too big, and in urban context is not me nor my family. In these big schools, you don't know people. You know, especially if you succeed, like I succeeded to the level of my unhappiness, basically. And I just, I'm very relational. I'm not somebody who can walk down the hall and not know the name of every single person I see and say hello to them and feel good about that. If that's not a part of my everyday life, then I'm not in the right place. So I needed a smaller community where I could have an impact on everyone, where I could learn from everyone. And talk about Zoom bombing. Sorry, buddy.
Come on.
He's very attached to me. Here, do you want to say hi and then I'll carry you up? Do you want to say hi to my friend?
Hi.
See, that's Mary. Come here, buddy.
Well, everyone, that's real life in the time of COVID, isn't it?
Oh, I'm at home with a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And this has been the most productive meeting I've had in like the last month. That was 13 minutes of uninterrupted time, Mary.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic. So now I'm going to ask you another question. How did that came from our parents? What about Derryfield stands out to you the most? Because you've been in a lot of schools.
Been in a lot of schools. So like, research-wise, when I thought about the opportunity, I was like, this is the right size school for me. Upper school, I've taught middle school, I've taught upper school, I've taught a little bit of elementary. Certainly spent a lot of time in classrooms across the board, but I'm an upper school teacher. I'm an upper school leader. I know it in my bones. So I was like, this is the right position. It's at a school that's the right size. It has a great reputation in independent school circles. I didn't know all the details yet. And then for us, the real selling point is that we're New Englanders. Yeah, did you hear that? You want to talk about socially emotional development right now? We're gonna make this work, right? We can edit this out, right?
Yeah.
This isn't live.
Not to worry, not to worry. Everybody, anyone listening has been a parent of small children. So they're all on the
Have they been parents of small children during a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic?
Well, at least you have that excuse. We had nights like that and we didn't.
Right. So we're gonna talk through the screaming as my wife.
Rolling.
My wife is getting his feelings chart right now.
One question was New Hampshire and Manchester are very different from Chicago or the Bronx. What are some of the things you're looking forward to exploring or experiencing here in New Hampshire?
So, we went to Chicago because we were like, sure, it sounds like a great job. They found me, they really want me to go there. But we're not Midwesterners, even though my wife is actually from Indiana. So she really knows what she's talking about when she says we're not Midwesterners. So we really targeted Northern New England. My family's had a home in Manchester, Vermont, for about 30 years, and it's our favorite place in the world. And so we've always been really drawn to Northern New England. And now here's the thing, and I say this in an attempt to solicit pity from the Derryfield community. Because of obvious circumstances, I have spent a day, or 2 days actually, thanks to the largesse of Derryfield. I've spent 2 days in Manchester and Concord, where we are going to live. And my wife has spent 0 time. She was going to fly out, and then things intervened. And we have actually now even purchased a home that we've never seen with our eyes. So in many ways, coming to Derryfield is really an exercise in I wouldn't say blind faith, because we have our eyes wide open. We know who we are, we know what we want, and we know that this opportunity feels right and checks all the boxes for us.
I want to assure our viewers that I believe it was yesterday, Jed texted me a picture of the house that they had, maybe it was the day before, just had their offer accepted on. And one of my dear friends owned that house. And our whole family, before moving here to Fairhaven Farm in Hopkinton, lived one street over, where I could see that house. It's a wonderful house. All the karma's falling into place. It's all going to be great. Not to worry.
I can one up you, Mary. I'll one up you right now. So probably about 6 months ago, I got a phone call from my younger sister, who lives in the Capital Region in New York State. And she said to me, Jed, I just went to her husband's a lawyer, a partner in a firm. I just went to this event and I sat next to this woman who is a head of school. And she was just lovely. I mean, I think she's exactly the kind of person that you would hit it off with so much. And at the time, I remember thinking, like, Judith, whatever, I was on the job market. It's frustrating. It's awful. I was like, I appreciate the help, but don't worry about it. So fast forward like 4 months later, I share with her like a spreadsheet that I've created to keep myself sane. And I had just that day added Derryfield. It had just come up on my computer, and I sent her and I said, there's one school here that I got my fingers crossed. And she looked at it and she's like, you fool. I met the head of school there. And so I'm not going to live that down for lots of Thanksgivings. I don't know what you get for a younger sister who was trying to turn me on to a really great opportunity. And I sort of, whatever. But, now I'm on a Zoom call with my new head of school. So, I mean, the stars are definitely working in our favor, Mary.
We're working in our favor. And as my sister-in-law, Becca, would say, it's not that it's a small world, it's that we run in small circles. So I want to ask you this question, which came from a parent. What excites you about teaching?
Oh, gosh. You're right. You're keeping time.
Yes.
So, yeah, I've thought a lot about this. And I've also had a lot of opportunity to reflect on this, because I did spend a year in a job where I was not supposed to teach, and I was compliant. And then the next year I just, begged and pleaded, please, I will teach anything. And so they gave me a semester elective, and then, I begged and pleaded again. So I've really thought about like what was missing in my life when I wasn't teaching, and why is it so important to me? I think for me, and this really sort of lays bare a lot of, I think, a lot of what my classroom is like. There is just no better feeling for me than the feeling of cooperation. I love identifying a goal of mutual benefit and then working together with a bunch of really creative, smart people towards that goal. That's, that has nothing to do with, it has to be young people but for me, teaching, it's primarily intellectual in nature. So it speaks to my core skill and my core commitment as a thinker. And then why I love the classroom and why I knew I couldn't make it as an academic is that I'm as fascinated about the social and emotional dynamics of the classroom as I am about the content that we are trying to explore together. It's that feeling of just water on water with a group of people, where we have different roles, but they're complementary, and we are all pulling our weight. And when things are out of whack, we look at it shoulder to shoulder, not toe to toe, and we ask ourselves, what do we want out of this experience? And how can we adjust our behavior to get what we all want?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that kind of dynamic that I think runs through everything I do in the classroom that for me is utterly just endlessly rewarding. It's challenging because every new group of kids in the classroom is a new challenge. And look, it's not a mistake that I've spent my life teaching literature and philosophy and history. It's the things that keep me up at night. It's the books I read. It's the conversations that I still have with my friends from college. And so, I could not at this point in my life imagine doing anything else with my life, and being this happy.
And so that leads us to what excites you about being the upper school head.
I've for a long time known that an upper school head was just a really, really great challenge for me. And the reason for that is a lot of it, until I had this job at Riverdale Country School, I had not had a lot of interaction with families, or with faculty. When you're a classroom teacher teaching a full load, your primary focus is on, the group of kids that you're teaching. And so when I got a course release and I sort of had a little bit more bandwidth and I started to interact deeply with families around supporting kids or finding enrichment opportunities for students, who are really able. And then when I started to talk to teachers who were struggling with how best to teach a child, or who wanted to develop a certain kind of skill or competence, I just realized that this was just another shade of what it is that I'm passionate about, which is that feeling of cooperation and easy reciprocity, except now I could have a larger impact because I was painting on a broader canvas. I was working with people now who, instead of helping a child, we were actually building systems and cultures that were going to help all the kids. And so for me, the upper school head position is this really exciting mix of strategic thinking as well as operational, everyday competence, making things work well, communicating clearly, holding people accountable. For me, it's the only position in a school where I get to interact regularly with the three constituencies that matter most to me. Number one is students. Working and getting to know every single kid in the division is my goal. I don't want to know their names. I want to know them. I want their story. I want their trajectory. Number two, faculty. Derryfield's the right size for me to really get to understand each faculty member's practice, what their goals are, and how I can help them. That's the most important sentence any educational leader can utter any day, which is, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing are families. I love to partner with families. I love to find ways to not just support kids, but to support parents. As you can see, I need all the support I can get here.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that the upper school head is at this crossroads of these three groups of people, all with aligned but distinctive interests. And I love the art of trying to see the big picture while making sure that everyday things run smoothly and fairly and clearly. And that is what I'm really excited for in this position.
Great. And how might your approach to your first months at Derryfield be?
Well, anybody who has spent time in schools, and I've spent about 20 years in schools, knows that every school is unique. Every school has its own traditions and rituals and history and values and beliefs and ways of doing things. Certainly that's been communicated to me very clearly in my 3 years in Chicago. I went from one school that I thought was approximately the same size, same kind of student body, same parent kind of community and culture. I thought I was just going from New York to Chicago. I'd seen this all before. Completely different schools, really completely different cultures. So, scales fell from my eyes. I walk into Derryfield knowing that I don't know. Of course, I'm informed and I have a lot of experience, but I also don't come with any particular filter or lens other than having a lot of really open and deep conversations with parents and kids, and teachers and trustees and fellow administrators to try to learn this place. My goal my first year is to understand, first and foremost, all the great things that are happening at Derryfield and to consolidate and deepen all the good things that are happening. I know that you've made a number of really bold decisions, which I think are incredibly valuable for kids. And my goal is not to come in and initially just sort of say, I've got all these great big ideas, but rather to say, you have great big ideas. Let's build a culture, systems, processes to make sure that these big ideas really show up in the everyday life of students' experiences and faculty experience, and the parents see it. So that's really my approach, which is very much to be open-minded, to listen. Can't do that for very long, though, especially as an upper school head, because, life comes at you. So, I'm definitely not coming in with any really strong preconceptions other than I think Derryfield is absolutely on the right path pedagogically and curricularly. And I'm excited just to build on those strengths and implement, effective ways to respond to some of the challenges that come with school change.
So another very important question, what are Jed's favorite sports teams?
So, in Chicago, though, that's the beginning of a fight, right? Even in Chicago, weirdly, because I don't know, it took me a while, north side, south side, people at my current school, when they would introduce themselves to me for the first time, they would tell me their sports affiliations. That's a true story.
It's an identity factor.
Oh, because if you are a Sox fan, then you're saying a whole lot about where your family's from in the city. You're saying a lot about your ethnic background.
What color socks are you talking about?
White ones.
Okay.
So here's the thing, and I'm not trying to butter up the Derryfield community, but if people do feel buttered, I can't help that, Mary. This is just the truth. So I was born and bred to be a Yankees fan. Wait. People are like, leave meeting. I was born and bred to be a Yankees fan, and my whole family, Yankee fans. I grew up 20 minutes from the stadium. And I had a terrible boss my second year out of college. It was the 1 year I spent in the private sector in publishing. Terrible, awful boss. And it was around the time that George Steinbrenner was abusing his power as, well, he always abused his power, but abusing his power as the owner of the evil empire, right? And there was just something in me just broke. I could not root for a team that had horrible, terrible ownership. And I've always had a real soft spot for the underdog. I'm a middle kid. And so when I looked around, and I went to school in Boston, I've always loved Boston. I've always loved like New England and the history and the culture. Even as a kid, I would watch like the local, what was it, WGBN or something. I would like watch the old movies on the Boston Channel. I'd be like, Boston, right? So there was just, and my college roommate lived down the street from Fenway. Oh. So like at his home, you could open up the window and listen to the game. It was totally amazing. He was like across from Lansdowne. So aghast, my family totally aghast, but I became a diehard Boston Red Sox fan. And here's the great thing. I had this epiphany around 2004, summer of 2004. So I got to celebrate a World Series victory and I didn't have to pay the price.
Or maybe you reverse the curse. We don't know.
No, I'm already prepping my son. This is a true story. All day today, we've been listening to Sweet Caroline, waiting for our first trip to Fenway.
Fantastic.
Story.
Fantastic. Another question, what are his top 3 book recommendations?
Oh God, that's a tough question. Okay, so Dirty Secrets of an English Teacher. I've taught mostly literature and philosophy, right? The truth is, personally, when I want to read books, I almost always read history. I don't know why. Like professionally, I do fiction. Personally, I do nonfiction. So I thought about this, and I think the first book would be the only. This is a little personal. The only book that I've ever actually wept when I turned the last page. True story, and it's Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which is an absolutely wonderful book to teach. By the way, the language is incredibly clear and accessible to high school kids. The ideas are as deep as the Marianas Trench, right? It's Hesse's criticism of Buddhism. I mean, it's incredibly deep, but it's a mystical book. You can read that book every day of your life. You wouldn't ever lose anything. Second, I would say, okay, so I'm a huge Raymond Carver fan. All of his poetry, all of his short stories, I've read absolutely everything published by him, and some unpublished stuff I got my hands on. He, I think, is an absolute master of the English language. And his stories are also amazing to teach because they're incredibly non-didactic. Sometimes you read these stories and you're moved, but you don't know why, and that's a great invitation to a conversation. Last is, I would say, that's my poodle. Can you hear my poodle? Rufus. The last is a history book. This is my for just my personal. So if you have not read The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman,
So good.
so thank you, Mary. And if you don't have time to read the whole book, just read the first 10 pages. Mary, you know what I'm talking about? I think it's her description of the assemblage of all these European royals at the coronation of like King George V or something like that. It is absolutely stunning to see what the world was like before the Great War. Mm-hmm. It just puts you there. You absolutely feel the breeze on your skin. That book is completely wonderful. I've read a ton of other stuff by Tuchman. She's absolutely amazing.
So our next question is, how do you see yourself interacting with and getting to know students and parents?
So, the student side of things, getting to know and hanging out comfortably with high school kids, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I should get this checked out. It is incredibly easy for me. It's very comfortable. I mean, there's probably no age group that I just get more than high school kids. So my only insight about this, other than being myself, which is a good thing because I genuinely really love that age group and really still resonate and connect with it, is to go where they are, right? I think that the thing is, you can't wait, especially if you're new in a school, you can't wait for these kids to feel comfortable to sort of, filter into your office or something. So I'm going to spend a lot of time outside my office, walking the halls, saying hello to people. I'm going to try really hard to know the name of every single kid in the division, even before I step through the door. We'll talk about that later. I need some student information. Flashcards are useful. But I want to get a leg up on that. I think that there's a real power to just somebody knowing your name. And so even before you have to say it, right? This person has cared enough to know that you're on his radar. So walking the halls, going to, sitting down with a bunch of students at lunch, even though they kind of hate it, I love it. And going to lots of athletic events, theater events, which I'm looking forward to anyway. But just really being a presence, walking through classrooms a lot. I think that will start to get them to know that, like, I'm here and, I'm not going anywhere, so might as well get to know this guy.
How about parents? Yeah, how about
Parents.
parents?
So parents, that was a big part of, that's a big part of my job in Chicago. And it's the part of my job that I think I've really, other than the teaching part, I've really loved the most. So I've been a very consistent presence in front of parents. I've gone out of my way to build a lot of evening programming and morning programming, so that parents can come, they can learn about what's going on in the school. I tend to be very research-based. I tend to also sort of really love to use video to give people a sense of what's actually going on in the classrooms. I feel like it's a really underutilized and undervalued resource for school leaders. And so I've done tons of coffees and talks. Eventually I ended up, just because I love teaching, because I loved the challenge of adult learners, that we started a program where I would just do philosophy classes with with parents, oftentimes because of my own intellectual interests, which are the philosophy of education, the ethics of parenting, multicultural education, democratic education. It would find topics and tie-ins to to things going on in the school or in the families, but they were really meant to be just standalone intellectual experiences. We're going to read some Plato. We're going to read some John Dewey. We're going to read some Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And I really love that. And I really think that in a great school, learning doesn't stop at 3:30 when the lights go off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Finally, I'm going to ask you a worry question that's come across here. Many rising juniors and seniors will be feeling anxious in the fall if they aren't able to visit colleges over the summer. Will the school be receptive to absences due to college visits?
What's happening with seniors and rising seniors right now is tragic. They're going through grief because they are losing something really, really important. I think the rituals and traditions of May and June are invaluable ways of coping with an enormous transition in their lives. And in many cases, they're not going to have it, or they're not going to have it when they wanted to have it, when generations of students before them had it, or in the way that they want to have it. I think we have to really feel for them. And I already know that Derryfield is, I think, thinking really creatively about delaying but not denying these students what they have earned, which is a chance to celebrate with each other and to have their community honor them publicly. In terms of what I think the upper school has to do, given the possibilities that rising seniors may not be able to do all the college visits that they would otherwise, is look, we're going to be living in hopefully a post-COVID-19 world. All I can tell you is that every good management philosophy says that when things change, things have to change. And I think that the world is going to present a lot of challenges to these students, and I think that the upper school has to accommodate and be reasonable and empathic about these challenges. We will provide guidance in order to make sure that students and families are not making decisions that are going to be detrimental to their kids' academic performance. But I think that we're going to have to definitely look at whatever thoughtful policies the school has had and just breathe a little bit of space into them so that students do not feel disadvantaged by just a lack of luck of being the class of 2021.
Well, and actually connected to that, there's one more question before we go to the chat, which is, what have you learned from distance learning that you think will improve on-campus learning?
Yeah, so, when this first happened, I think every teacher and every kid and family were kind of looked at this as, this is just crisis management learning. We were all scrambling. Many of us, our practice is built on the everyday in-person give and take of the classroom. Insofar as we use a lot of educational technology, it's not always, the constant mediating presence, right? So I think as this is developed and this global challenge has developed, I think we are starting to move away from crisis management into sort of seeing what are the advantages and opportunities that come from being in this position longer term. And that's what I talk to a lot with my colleagues. We talk a lot about what will be retained, willingly, happily, enthusiastically retained, and what is being learned about learning in general, and then how we can use technology and how we might even consider really innovative modifications maybe to the way that we use time in the classroom. So the thing that I'll just say this, I've been reading a lot of research about this and writing a lot about it. I think that the most important virtue of distance learning for an independent school, or especially an upper school division, is efficiency. Mm. I think that there are ways that we can learn how we can use asynchronous learning to make sure that we are no longer doing any passive learning in the classroom, or we minimize it, very much so. So when we're in the classroom, we're in the classroom and we're going to suck up every ounce of collaborative and interactive juice that we can to do open-ended, divergent, highly challenging tasks. Mm-hmm. And we're going to use being away from the classroom in asynchronous times to do some more of the knowledge acquisition, the skill building and practice that sometimes we still do in the classroom today. I think we're going to realize that when we move that home, kids are going to learn a lot more, a lot faster, and we're going to, in the end, just build rigor and scope for our kids.
Great. Well, I'm going to go to the chat now here. Let's take a look. Oh, I have all of one question. Let's see here.
Oh, well.
Oh, just a comment. A Derryfield good karma comment from Lindley Schutz. Jed is moving into the former Derryfield home of Gary and Meg Hirschberg. Gary Hirschberg is a Derryfield alum. So there you go. More good karma.
Well, Mary, I'm happy that we arranged this all to your favor. I think, it's always nice to start off on the right foot. Look, truth be told, I mean, if you think about all the ways in which this could have gone horribly wrong, I thought I would start my time at Derryfield like living in a corporate furnished apartment. And saying to my wife, no, really, this is going to get better. And instead, we're moving into like the house of our dreams in a wonderful neighborhood. You know the neighborhood well. And we just feel incredibly blessed and amazingly, profoundly grateful. So thanks for the Gary Hirschberg thing. I think that's just all sort of saying to me that, again, the stars are moving in our favor right now. So let's enjoy it, because they don't always.
Well, thank you so much, Jed, for giving us a chance to get to know you. Oh, there's one more flashing. Thank you. Let's see. Just a nice comment from my advisee. Thank you, Catherine Gage. Thank you. Great talk. What classes will Mr. Silverstein be teaching? Well, that's kind of a mystery right now, I think.
Yeah.
That he's
I'll teach what you need me to teach. Things are a little bit up in the air, and I'm a team player and a good soldier. I'll tell Catherine that I'm currently teaching an applied ethics course, mostly all to second semester seniors. It's just how it worked out, but I've taught 9th through 12th. We start off with a unit on logic and argumentation. Formal and informal argumentation. It's a heavy emphasis on public speaking skills and rhetorical persuasion. And that's sort of our foundational unit. And then we then do a unit on 2 different moral frameworks for understanding what the right thing to do is. And then we take all of this theoretical structure and we apply it to questions about the morality of the death penalty in America, leading to public events where the entire school is welcome to come. It's usually a debate on the death penalty. And then we study, right now we're studying free speech on campus, because these are kids going off to college. And there's been a tremendous amount of controversy about how we should respond to speakers with views that we find wrong or offensive or even harmful. And so we are studying that. We look at some classical philosophical sources, primary sources only. We look at some opposing viewpoint essays. And the students are actually not going to do a debate. They're going to do something called an ethics bowl. Google it.
So we actually now suddenly people are springing to life with questions.
Oh, good.
Do you play an instrument?
Huh. Okay. I play the guitar.
Do you play?
So I happen to, in Chicago, one of the best things about Chicago is I live on the north side and I live 5 minutes away from a absolutely amazing place called the Old Town School of Folk Music, where I have been taking guitar lessons for the last couple of years. And I played, bass guitar and guitar, poorly in middle school and high school. So this has been a really wonderful opportunity. I've always sung. I love singing. I did a lot of theater, a lot of musicals. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to build some guitar chops. And in middle school and high school, I played God's greatest instrumental gift, which is the tuba.
Well, the request is from one of our music teachers who wants to recruit you to play in the pit.
Oh, from Tony?
Yes.
Tell Tony he's going to have to do some private lessons for me. I got to get my lips back.
And then a mom was asking about grades. She's a rising senior and heard that grades are going to be emphasized. Will there be more pressure to seniors next year in addition to applications? I think this is a better question for our Thursday Night Live series where Brennan Barnard, our college counselor, is hosting really high-ranking admission professionals from all different colleges. Last week included Elon and Babson and another, I believe, I forget the last school. I mean, they're wonderful. I think that's a question for Thursday. So I'm going to pass that along to Brennan to address on Thursday.
Yeah,
So Ed, thank you so much for spending so much time with us. Audience, thanks so much for being with us. I so appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy your own fireside tonight.
Good.
Bye.
Can I say one more thing?
Please do.
Please come and meet me. Please come, shake my hand if we're able to, and we're back on campus and things are moving. Please come meet me. You will be doing me the favor and the honor of getting to know you a little bit, whoever you are, parent, faculty, student. Please don't hesitate. My door's always open.
Fantastic. Thank you. Be well. Be
Thanks,
well,
Mary.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.